2 years?
Yes. So, as it were, over the past 2 years, approximately 34 individuals and three companies have been indicted or pled guilty to a crime that are members of the Trump orbit.
34?
And that's 34. And that's not including recent, that's strictly in fact, that's just the Mueller investigation.
Okay, so it hasn't even been 4 years, but I'm gonna give it 4 years. So that's eight and a
Eight
half,
people
round
a
up to
year.
9 people a year.
Sure.
Well, hey, tell you what, hold on. 8. We'll do 8. Is that better? Does it sound better?
But hey, that sounds fine. Hey, yeah, that sounds really great, Nate. 8 people a year in the president's inner circle. That sounds a lot better. I
I,
mean, when it was
I
a half dozen, and the plumbers that in a third-rate burglary, as Kissinger called it, that instigated all this stink around President Nixon. So
well,
six.
I know you want to split hairs here on the plumbers and in the 6 and the. I'll give it to you. Trump takes the cake in the fact that's 8, possibly round up to 9 per year. That's an
Can you
impressive
really compare the two?
look. I don't know.
You're gonna do it, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm not because we're in an intro, and I have to say, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the ModState podcast. As always, whether you're listening internationally or domestically or watching on YouTube, hi. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support, your listenership, and bringing us back to the microphones. We'd have these conversations anyway, so why not let the world hear them too? Because God, that's what the world's asking for. As always, Mod State, we are here to have civil conversation and show that even though there are disagreements, at the end of the day, we don't have to hate each other. So, look, what is it now? We've gone a couple days over what we normally record. That's because I had to finish my last quarter of school. Things are busy.
It's no excuse.
But I'm always worried. Like, I feel like you lose listener engagement. You're not consistent, but holy crap. We just need to sit around for an extra 2 days and it gets crazy.
I feel like Han Solo here in Return of the Jedi when he gets unfrozen from carbonite and they tell him Luke Skywalker is going to save everybody. He's like, right, okay, so I go away for a couple of years and everybody gets delusions of grandeur.
The Lincoln Project just recently had an awesome advertisement. It was this family's son woke up out of a coma, and they were starting to tell him about everything that happened over the last 4 years, and it's just obviously like a Trump supporting family sort of walking their way into like this. Wow, this doesn't really sound that great. So it's similar to the Han Solo, not as good a story as yours. But
Was this legit?
yeah, it's a legit Lincoln Project. You can look it up. I'll link it in the show
No,
notes.
no. I know the Lincoln Project purports to be legit, but is this story legit?
Oh no, absolutely not. It's complete satire. It's awesome though. So,
All right. Yeah.
But yeah, look, what have we missed so far since we've met? So obviously the big shocker, surprise, spoiler alert: the vice president, former Vice President Joe Biden has picked a running mate, Kamala Harris, to the what I would consider a sigh of relief. I think that's probably the pulse check that I've been getting. I certainly think there were less strong candidates, or I think maybe there were definitely candidates that would have espoused the more progressive platform that I think a lot of people on the left are looking for. However, I think personally Kamala Harris was a strong choice in the fact that it's going to be hard to attack her from the right, and I think she's just a strong orator. I think she's a strong debater. I think it's certainly. I'm actually more interested to watch the vice president debate than, quite frankly, I am the president. I already know.
Wait, whoa.
I
Are you really?
I am, because I already know what we're getting with Donald Trump. I don't really need to see it. I don't really care. I already know who the guy is.
Donald Trump and Joe Biden?
Look, from a substance perspective, I'm looking forward to the vice presidential debate.
Okay,
From
that's
a
fair.
popcorn, like
Substance, yes.
from
You
popping,
make a good,
from popping the popcorn, I'm all in on the presidential.
What?
It will be cinema. That's what that will be.
It's going to be a beggar's banquet, man. I mean, no, from a substance perspective, Mike Pence, he's not going to get ad hominem. He's not going to get personal. He's going to more than likely regurgitate quite a few well-rehearsed lines. Kamala Harris is going to press, but come on, this is pure theater that we're about to see with these two, with Biden and Trump. I mean, let's get real. I mean, there's no skipping out on this one. As far as the pick goes, I mean, long ago, privately and on this podcast, I said that she was the one that A, I felt rock star, and B, it would be a mistake for him not to pick. More than likely, her critics are going to be on the left as far as genuine policy disagreements. I mean, she put quite a few people away as a DA and attorney general in California. So she kind of checks a law and order box for the Biden ticket, as well as him saying that he's not pro defund the police. It's going to be tough, in my view, for them. I mean, sure, there's the alleged brazen affair with Mayor Willie Brown in San Francisco, but again, they're going to have to really pick at those straws. And again, do you really, from the glass house that is the Trump administration, want to throw stones?
Look, man, I really believe so much of this stuff, the birther stuff. Is she
I wouldn't go in there.
Look, I know you weren't, and I'm not insinuating that you are, but all this stuff is sort of played out. And, I think for the left, I think rightfully so, for a lot of the progressive left, it doesn't fit. She doesn't fit in with their platform. But again, the question is this...
Neither does Joe Biden.
Well, exactly. Is this a referendum on the DNC, or is this a referendum on Trump? And you've got to decide. You have to decide.
Donald Trump.
It's exactly what it is.
Otherwise, AOC wouldn't have endorsed Joe Biden.
Exactly, and Bernie Sanders, for that matter. So again, we can go on and on about sort of the left and the identity politics, but I just don't hear much about the issues with Kamala Harris. Everyone knew it before she was picked, but I think at this point it's like, listen, this actually is a strong pick. She is a strong pick, and she will strengthen the ticket to go against Donald Trump. And I think at the end of the day, over and over, we've talked about in this podcast that the hatred for Donald Trump will outweigh the dislike for Joe Biden. I don't know, because the hatred for Donald Trump is so strong that I don't think there'll be a lack of enthusiasm come November, or mail-in ballots if you can do that. So I think it was a strong pick. I think from a leadership perspective, and that's what we've talked a lot about, I think she is poised to step in if anything happens to Joe Biden in his presidency, and I think she'd do a fine job. I really do. So that being said, there have been a number of other things. I obviously will get to Mr. Bannon. That's been the news of the day. But also the USPS. Okay, so I wanted to get your initial thoughts about this, right? Because this is immediately where people hate centrists. They're like, pick a hill and die on it. Be principled.
Well, they're uneducated on the subject.
So this is where I pause.
Centrism is not about fence straddling.
I agree. It is also about making sure that I'm not making a stupid decision.
No, again, they're uneducated on the subject. If that's the way they feel, because more than likely they know nothing about centrism and know no centrists.
Look, to me, it's more about making an informed decision. However, the optics, obviously, of the USPS is that we're all of a sudden making this push to really streamline the USPS, or and or the other way it could be we're just trying to run it to the ground. Now, there's a couple of things I've been thinking about with this. First off, I think there are some double standards when it comes to a federal agency. It is as if the USPS is somehow some revenue generating agency that is supposed to be having a strong bottom line and like positive free cash flow and all this stuff. It's an agency. We don't give $700 billion to the Department of Defense and say that they lost $750 billion. No, that's their budget.
Also, it's nothing against you here. That's also a misrepresentation of the issue, the function of the Postal Service.
Sure.
Because when you get into folks that say, look, they've been unprofitable for years, and they can argue that successfully.
Sure.
They could argue the same thing about Amtrak. However, the thing that people miss here, it's counterintuitive to alleged conservatives and pro-Trump folks, because he quite possibly, broke over the top and won because of mail-in ballots, and also because, so you're going to say that we're not going to deliver mail to rural areas because those are fiscal losers. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about those people. I'm saying as far as those deliveries, there's no way to make a profit off of rural deliveries.
But my question is the USPS supposed to be turning some sort of profit? Is that the point? It's an agency.
I didn't say that.
No, I realize that. But that's the question I ask. Every libertarian sub on Reddit, every conservative sub on Reddit, and every other conservative that's like, yeah, it's losing money. It's like, yeah, it's a service, stupid. Like FedEx, UPS, and every other delivery service isn't going to the outer reaches of Alaska to deliver mail.
I mean, they will.
Yeah, for an assload of money that no one's going to be able to afford.
Right. For exponentially more dollars than the United States Postal Service, as you aptly put it. But that's the wrong question. My question to those folks, and look, I'm a fiscal libertarian / conservative. You know this, okay?
I do.
There's a lot of waste in the federal government. My question to these folks would be, so is what you are saying that we need to completely stop delivering mail to rural areas? I thought y'all hated the cities. So which is, because the reality is, no, we're not going to stop doing that. Well, conversely, there's no way to make a profit off of rural mail carriage. There's just not.
So is it, the question is the wonderful theory of privatizing the USPS, let's get it off the government books, let's not fund it, let's privatize it. It's almost as if it's almost as if that is a really nice theoretical sort of white privilege thing to say. Like, yeah, we'll just privatize it because no big deal. I can spend $50 to ship something from LA to New York. No problem. I just feel like it comes from this complete lack of awareness that
I'm not going to lean into the white privilege theory here. I think I'm
just saying I can comfortably say that because I don't live in the outskirts of Alaska where my family's lived for generations and generations. And I can afford to ship something. So I don't care if it's FedEx or USPS. Whether it's white privilege or that's class privilege, it's a privilege.
Well, that's up to you to decide where you're coming from, okay?
I just throw that out there.
Please don't ascribe those values to the rest of the fiscal libertarians out there. I think
for them... Then what place is it coming from then? It's a theory, and it sounds great.
They're uneducated on the subject, okay? Because again, as you aptly put it, it's a service, okay? And so... tell me how you're going to make a profit off of going 40 miles from Hattiesburg, Mississippi to deliver mail. And, by the way, prescription medications to veterans in Mississippi. You're not going to make a profit on those deliveries regardless. So go ahead and privatize it. Guess what's going to happen? We're still going to make those deliveries, and we're going to end up subsidizing that newly privatized postal service. You want to phase it out and hand off all those contracts to FedEx and UPS, yeah, okay, that's going to be cheap. It's
Mhm.
going to be a lot more costly than it is now. But I will say this also: I do see the I do see the threat to Black America that downsizing the United States Postal Service is, because it has long been sort of a ladder, if you will, up to the middle class. Okay, it was one that early on was ready to hire Black veterans after World War II, and it's long been favorable to that community. So I can also see, I'm not tone deaf to the fact that that's a reality, that it feels existential. Okay, but regardless of any sort of social politics, this is a non-starter. There's a lot of places that we could address fiscal
Mhm.
sanity in the federal government. Okay, unless we intend to say it's okay to just, we're not going to deliver mail to non-rural area, or excuse me, non-urban areas, then
Yeah. So
there's no way for it.
So if I hear you correctly, it's like, listen, yeah, it's not turning a profit, it's a service. We need this service. There's plenty of other places that we can save money, and this USPS service is not one of them, or at least
No, it's
shouldn't be one of them.
No,
No.
it's not. But look at the potential solutions. Again, the solutions are A, in my mind, a non solution. We're just not going to deliver mail to the rural areas that have a lot of veterans there, for instance. I mean, and since when is living in a rural area a reason to be discriminated against? And the other solution is, okay, we're going to privatize it. All right, great. You're going to end up subsidizing the losses that they take. And C, okay, let's phase it out and hand these contracts to FedEx, UPS, whatever. Well, how much is that going to cost? This is a non-starter.
I agree. All right. Well, so let's turn to the sort of the optics of this entire thing, and so that
I mean, assuming you had a mail-in voting point to make.
not necessarily. I'll get to that. Look, Colorado, where I live, just they've been doing this for years. It's amazing. I have the chance to open up the ballot. I'm unaffiliated, so I get both of them. I get to look over all the issues, and I get to look up all the people, and I get to send it back. I either send it back, put it in a box, or I can go to the polling station and drop it off, or I can go in person. Shit's easy. It's secure. It's safe. My signature's on it. I mean, it's that simple. It's that's the way. Quite frankly, I don't have a lot of opinions, but one of them will be that's the way it should be throughout the entire United States. And I just think,
Well, look at you, Nate.
look at me having, look at me having opinions.
Blessed to live in Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
look, listen, y'all don't have to move here, but it's one of the greatest cities in the United States.
What,
Look at
Colorado's a great city?
Denver. Denver.
Oh,
There's,
okay. Making sure.
look, psilocybin mushrooms are decriminalized, weed's legal. The city I live in has an open container law, so I can walk a beer down the street. Open intox. What else? We have mail in we have mail in ballots, and the mountains are right down the road. So yeah, it's a beautiful place. It's
Speaking of Colorado, the polls have tightened to the point where your boy Gardner's now it's a toss-up.
I know. You know what? He's been running a strong campaign here.
He
He's
deserves to go back, frankly.
he's really pushing the outdoor angle, in the conservation angle, which
Well,
plays.
he's really made a strong case for the federalization of cannabis
Yeah,
laws. I mean, forget his party affiliation. I'm being real with you. I feel like it's going to be a disservice to your state if Gardner doesn't get to go back.
look, Hickenlooper, as people love him or hate him, he left the governor's mansion with all-time low unemployment in Colorado. I mean, Colorado is not a bad place under his leadership. So it is a toss-up, and people hate Gardner for the reasons they hate Gardner, and they hate Hickenlooper I mean, it's very political. I think either one of them is will be fine in DC. Quite frankly, it's what's happening in Colorado at a state level that I think is really
No,
important.
I
And
feel you. I just,
yeah,
I when I look at the incumbents, then I'm going, yeah, you know what? You need to go home. And there's quite a few of those.
sure.
Corey Gardner honestly doesn't come near the top of that list.
Yeah, I mean he's a little little Trumpy for a lot of people here in Colorado, but Colorado's purple. It can go either way. But I think Colorado continues to lead the way in the United States in terms of progressive change. And I think so long as Colorado continues to do that and show that it works, the rest of the union will sort of follow suit. But yeah, look, the USPS thing, I'm not saying that it shouldn't be streamlined or there shouldn't be fat trimmed. Like I agree that any agency, I mean, we can go back to our military experience and look around at waste and not necessarily fraud, but certainly waste and inefficiencies. So I'm fully on board with that happening. However, it just continues. The Trump administration continues to do certain things at certain times that just, it's hard not to look at it as a malicious intent. And also it is a fairly easy case to make that there is tampering with in terms of the democracy of the United States when you take away the access or sort of the mediums by which people can send their vote in. I mean, the reality is COVID is happening. People are dying. People are getting sick. And if you think it's bullshit, I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm in it every single day. It is real. It is dangerous. People should be able to safely vote from home and mail in their ballots. So I don't think it's insane. It's not an insane proposition. So when the Postmaster General starts this initiative of sort of downsizing the USPS 90 days before an election, it looks fucking shady. Like I don't know. Like, please, at this point, go ahead and try to persuade me otherwise.
Well, I'm not going to do that. Okay, first of all, I'm not a Trump administration attorney. However, what I will say here, and look, anybody that doesn't believe me, please privately message Nate and ask him. Call BS, and he can tell you. I feel like I've called balls and strikes about as fairly as can be done in terms of a non-Democrat with regard to the Trump administration. I'm going to call BS, though, if anyone, the royal you, is implying that fraud and waste stops and starts with the Trump administration. I beg to differ. Okay, so that also is a non-starter. Okay,
yeah, that's fair. I'm certainly not saying that it is all that fraud and waste began with President Trump and ends with President Trump. I'm not saying that.
We've got what, $3-4 trillion of federal private land holdings in the states. Those need to be sold off, and that needs to be put towards the deficit, towards the national debt. There's no reason for us to own the majority of states in the West. Sorry, I don't care. I don't care about the conservation argument. Okay, I care about the deficit, and a lot of people are going to care about that once the Social Security Trust Fund goes bankrupt in the next decade. And that's not a rumor. Okay, so this is to me, you talk about splitting hairs. As far as how does it look for the Inspector General, the de facto head of the Postal Service to engage in such, it does not look good.
No.
And again, to me, my brother made this point to me in private conversation, and per the article that was put up on ModState from him, you can tell he's rather conservative / libertarian. And he made the point, look, I don't get why conservatives aren't the first ones saying, hey, let's make voting easier. I mean, I've long argued we go to blockchain. It's virtually fraud proof. Okay, you have two independent parties. In this case, it'd be the government and the taxpayer, government and the voter, independently verifying IP addresses. I mean, I'm not sure why we're not going that route. So, in this business, we're going to try and deprive felons from voting. This is absurd. They've paid their debt to society. How dare any independent authority, quote, try and deny them, whether it's in the state of Florida or otherwise, from voting?
So then,
a jury ascribed them a sentence. They served it. They paid their debt. Let them vote.
So the question then is, Why are we so resistant to mail-in voting? I mean, if I was conservative and I was in a conservative circle, I said, why are we so opposed to mail-in voting? Shouldn't we want to make access to voting easier?
It's a fear.
What's the holdup? The fear of what?
It's fear.
Is it really fear of voter fraud, or is it fear of actually
no. When
not?
I say fear of losing.
Fear of losing.
Okay, but in my mind, in my brother's mind, he made this point very well. Okay, if the Republicans or whoever, non-Democratic Party, libertarians, whoever, became known as the, hey, you know what, you're a legal citizen, regardless of whether you went to prison or not, you're going to get to vote. And here's how. If that party became known as that party, I'm sorry, I think a lot of people will be inclined to lend an ear to the Republican Party or whoever.
Yeah, again, man,
it's a mistake.
It's missed opportunity after missed opportunity after missed opportunity. Because what are we?
Aside from the fact it's wrong.
Because we're conservative? Is that the overall problem?
It's morally wrong. I mean, we're talking about we want people to rebuild and reintegrate themselves into society after going to prison and paying their debt. Really?
So look, I started bringing this up to you via text, and I think it was after the whole Steve Bannon thing came out early this morning. And look, quite frankly, I was a bit shocked that Steve Bannon would be associated in this sort of fraud case. It's not that I think Steve Bannon is above that. I just think for someone that is so ideologically inclined in terms of, I don't know, I just, for who he is and what he stands for, like it or hate it, I guess I was a bit surprised to see someone like that wrapped up in it. And now that it has happened, and again, right, innocent until proven guilty, looks pretty guilty. It's this, we're talking about conservatism, and the major problem here is that it's one after another. I think it's a really easy argument to make that the conservative, at least the GOP, is now the party of Trump. They're stuck with this brand for a while. They had their chance to get off the train. They had their chance to get off the train, and they didn't. I mean, I even said this at the beginning of the year. I said, now's the opportunity. Now is the opportunity to distance themselves, and it's going to be increasingly more difficult to do that leading up to the election if it still stands, if the polls still stand and Biden still has this lead. So it's like adding insult to injury to the fact that Trump's behind in the polls, that this guy who he had on the NSC, which is the National Security Commission or Committee, is now indicted for fraud, for basically saying, like, look, we're a private charity, we're going to help build the wall, raise $25 million, funnel a little bit, get that little taste. Was it $1 million and then $20,000 a month to his buddy, run it through a shell company. And it's one after another. That's what we said at the beginning of precast, eight or nine per year. 34.
That's what I mean. I hope it was worth it, homeboy.
Look, every single time stuff like this happens, it validates the way people feel about the GOP. Maybe not all conservatives blanketly, but at least the conservatives that continue to support this sort of this madness, this sort of hypocrisy, this idea that rules for thee but not for me, or it doesn't matter until it happens to me. And it continually comes up. It continually comes up. And I'm telling you, in terms of branding of the GOP, and look, there might be a whole bunch of conservative guys out there that are like, look, man, I don't care. Like, I like that image. I don't care. I like the image. And it is continuing. It's continuing to look cold. There is a lack of empathy and a lack of sympathy. And look, that's not just some bullshit tough man, like, I don't need to be sympathetic or empathetic. No, compassion is a character of a good man, of a good person. To be empathetic is a high EQ. And it's just being lost. It over and over, the left is being validated by the actions of those that have crafted the Trump administration, who now owns the GOP brand for the next 4 years. I don't know if I can make it any clearer. Like, tough guy all you want, asshole all you want, like you're gonna own this shitty ass brand when he loses.
Oh, look, I'm not going to concern myself with the branding of the left, okay? But what I am going to say is that the true test of a gentleman is his treatment of those who are of no use to him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And this business of I'm tough and I'm visceral, therefore I mistreat others. Not really sure how many of our heroes that we actually ascribe to emulate actually acted that way. Okay, that's my first of all. But look, the conservatives, particularly, I will say the evangelical crowd, because the Catholics tend to be more purple. I think that's fair.
God bless the Catholics.
The evangelicals, in particular, but conservatives specifically, put paid to any doubt a long time ago when, okay, so maybe McCain should have been a Democrat all along. Regardless, when they were okay with the president insulting war heroes. They were okay with him denigrating veterans. They were okay with him blaspheming their God. Okay, not once, but twice in the same rally. Okay, and they were all right with abandoning our allies, the Kurds. I mean, do I need to continue? We abandoned the fiscal conservatism that was supposedly so important during the Obama era.
Oh, don't worry. If Biden wins, it'll be a deal again. It'll be a big deal again. But your question does stand. Like, what happened? Are we so angry that we're willing to put all this stuff away? That we're willing to like lose our principles, the religious, spiritual principles of loving your neighbor. Look, I don't know if you're watching this for the first time on YouTube. I'm an atheist. Like I did the Christian thing for 25 years of my life. I'm very well versed in it. And wow, dare I say exactly what you've said over and over. What did Gandhi say? I certainly like your Jesus, but I don't like your Christians. It's there. What is this? There's this pent up anger. There's this pent up frustration, like we're losing something, or I should say, there's this portion of society that they're losing, like a status or something. Where there's all this pent up anger, and Trump is just allowing it to come out, and we're losing all of these great values that could be. And
look, he really tapped into something in his campaign in 2016. And I'm not saying I agree with this. I'm saying he really he hit a nerve when he said, we never win anymore.
It is us mercy. It is very.
I mean, it's accurate, but my response would be just like the people that criticize the military today and say there's no more Normandies. And I'm going, yeah, you're exactly right. We vanquished those foes. The young men of today don't have the opportunity to storm the beaches of Normandy. But it's like, come on, sugar. Really? We're going to go along with whatever, because again, it comes back to winning is tantamount to all else.
Do we really want Normandy?
Well, the idea is that, there's just just massive wins to be had. And I'm going, heavy lies the crown of empire.
Well, it's almost as if, do we need to garner support and have this patriotic pride by these huge wins? When can we sort of retool the wins as creating equal opportunity in this country? That would be a pretty big win, right? Or like, dare I say, everyone has the equal opportunity to vote. That it doesn't put out the marginalized because it's one day out of 4 years, or that there's just a number of things. I mean, it's all about rebranding the win, but I guess there's just one side of the house that sees that a bit differently, and I think that's what the referendum is. This entire election. It's not just Trump. It's the Trump brand. It's the Trump thought process. It's the win. It's the losers. It's the zero-sum game. Fucking tired. Fucking
That's
tired
what I
of
mean.
it.
The last time that we had a Republican president that grasped that, in my mind, and again, I'm sure I'm a bit biased here, but was Nixon. He understood the concept of, look, there's got to be something after. There's got to be a, hey, war is over, hallelujah, we rebuild. Okay, we ever since the Cold War really took hold, and Ford never got a chance, and Carter wasn't prepared to begin with. But ever since the Cold War really took hold, it was like that. From then on, it was we're in this constant state of we've got to be able to out nuke the other country. We've got to be able to, you know.
I and maybe he was. I mean, you're far, you're a far greater student of the Nixon era than I am. So
Look, I'm not
it's
saying Nixon was some kind of saint.
no, I realize that, but
I mean, we're talking about somebody that had the Democrats in charge of both houses of Congress his entire presidency. And I dare say, other than TR, please, by all means, fact check me. You won't have a hard time on Google. Look up the greenest president we've had. Other than TR, it ain't going to be Obama. It's going to be Nixon. He's going to veto those bills. Okay? He didn't have to institute the Philadelphia Plan saying, no, you will interview minorities for federal jobs, also known as affirmative action. Well, are you going to see a Republican president doing that today? You know, there was a grasp on the bigger issues here. Okay, look, the war on drugs was a mistake. Okay, and I feel like if he was around now, he'd do it differently. The point is, okay, with the Nixons, the Rockefellers, the Eisenhowers, I mean, Rachel Maddow, for God's sake, said if she had to ascribe to a party back in the day, she would have been an Eisenhower Republican. Where did that era go? I mean, so things have clearly changed to the point where, you know, the candidate that wins the House nomination is the one that most says that they'll fall in line after the president. When did that become a litmus test?
yeah, I guess I don't know. I don't know. I look. The more and more we try to break down like where the fabric in society is falling apart is, and I think that's
a conversation. That's
sure,
a completely different.
I realize that, but it does come down to this. What it has come down to is an us versus them mentality. It's a win-lose mentality, and it ultimately is. It's I don't want to say it's disingenuous, but it's certainly there lacks some intelligence there in terms of how we move forward, how you have relationships, and how you talk to people about things you disagree with. When it sort of just boils down to this Fox News, like, look what they're doing. And it's like, you don't have to agree with it, man. But it doesn't mean that everything, like, again, just because you disagree with someone doesn't make them a Nazi. And just because you disagree with someone doesn't make them, I don't know, Antifa. And I don't know why we have to go to all these extremes. And it just drives me nuts because it's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
I will say it's a little tough for not, the royal you hear, but it's a little tough listening to somebody on the left talk about cancel culture. It's like, really?
Well,
you ought to know.
It certainly is interesting that it's becoming certainly a more mainstream discussion, that whole cancel culture, because ultimately it will be the demise of the left if they don't come to grips with it. And at that point, the right can look over the horizon and laugh as it burns, because the cancel culture will be the death of the left if we're not too careful.
It's the enemy. Forget the death of the left or the death of whoever. It's the death of discourse in this country.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I get it. It's reprehensible for a professor at Iowa to say that she's going to fail her students if they have a conservative, ideology in a paper. I get that. That's abysmal. But at the same time, let's not forget that the same president that decries cancel culture calls for boycotts. What's the difference?
Yeah, a boycott's different from cancel culture. Cancel culture means we need to wipe something off the face of the earth. Boycotting
Is
is
it different comes from the president?
if it's a different. Well, I mean, if boycotting versus cancel culture is different, and it's different even if the president says it is, or
Well, my
brings
point
it up.
is, though, how do you think Donald Trump means it? What's the difference?
How does Donald Trump? I think Donald
Yeah,
Trump's an idiot. So I don't know that.
my point is, my point is when Donald Trump calls for a boycott, he's not splitting intellectual hairs like you are. He wants the exact same thing that cancel culture wants. So, really, you're going to call them out? I know you and I mean boycott differently. I don't think he does
Yeah,
because, after all, he called the press the enemy of the people.
he
So
did.
I'm not so sure. I get it. You and I mean that word differently. I don't think he does. I just don't think he likes it when it's turned on conservative ideologues.
Absolutely. And of course not. And
I mean, but I do see your point in saying it means different things. But
it does. And anyway, again, cancel culture is a whole nother conversation. Obviously, just like the
well,
breakdown fabric of society. But
file shoot act.
yeah. So, gosh, we're coming up the latter end of this podcast episode. What else did we miss? He met with the Prime Minister of Iraq.
Oh
Who
well,
cares?
in fairness, and you're probably not going to agree with me here. You might, who knows? But I will say that the Trump administration, regardless of who spearheaded it, um, scored a big win with the Israeli UAE deal.
Oh yeah, yeah. You mean the thing that was existing? So they packaged it up as a good marketing deal.
Well, it's a bit different in the sense that you have one of what is it, 31, 32 Arab states. Can't remember exactly the number, but you have another Arab state that's actually openly, legally recognizing the state of Israel. That is a big deal. No, I mean, not to you. You're not pro-Israel, but it is to me.
Well, and I realize that. I think it comes at the right time for Benjamin Netanyahu because look, if Trump loses, Netanyahu is nothing in Israel. There's going to be a whole lot of people in Israel that are like, gosh, I don't know how important it is that this guy's president. I mean, that's just
There's
my
a
take on it.
lot of hardliners. There's a lot of hardliners in Israel, Nate.
I realize that. It's a prediction. It's a theory of the demise of Benjamin Netanyahu with his corruption and all the stuff. If Trump loses, it might not mean as much to Israelis there that Netanyahu's in power. So, but it's
We're talking about we're talking about a country though where their biggest soccer club was renamed after Donald Trump.
yeah,
Let's
exactly,
not forget that.
exactly.
I mean, I don't know that it's gonna start and stop there because I mean there's a certain affinity they're going to always feel for the United States, the United Kingdom, and France. I don't know. With all due respect, I think you're wrong about Netanyahu as far as their affinity for him goes because a lot of people felt lost after Ehud Barak offered all those concessions in '01, only for the deal to get spat on anyway.
Sure,
So
and
there
it
a
could be.
lot of people that
I could be wrong. I could be wrong. However, it's just a potential geopolitical play in that part of the world.
his position will be more untenable without Donald Trump. I mean, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. But I mean, whether you want to say it's repackaged or not, what's not repackaged is the fact that the Emiratis actually legally recognize Israel,
Sure.
and that is a big deal.
Yeah, and whether you like it or not, it did happen. And I mean the proverbial you. Uh, whether you
Yeah,
like it or not, it did
I mean,
happen. And I think it. Look, I am for peace in the region for sure. Personally, with the right concessions, but that is a wildly other.
well, look, I get that, and one thing I'll say here is that look, the Palestinian position would be a lot more tenable if you weren't constantly negotiating with two authorities. The fact is, their two major holdings are divided between two rival factions within their own people. Well, that makes it very difficult, as you might imagine, for America, Israel, and the UAE, who are negotiating, to then go, okay, who is it exactly that we're talking to here? I mean, you can imagine why that would be an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do see your point. It is significant enough to at least bring up. And of course, again, I'm always here to push your buttons a little bit because otherwise this just wouldn't be as exciting, would it?
Why not?
Why
I
not?
mean, why
Why
not,
not?
dude?
Why not? New shit
I
has
mean,
come
hey,
to light.
look, the new shit's come to light, and I mean, God knows I've been wrong a multitude of times on here, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners on the left are like, yeah, with about every point you made tonight.
Yeah, and for all the listeners on the right, every point that I've made tonight. So with that, we're at about 45 minutes. It's always an honor and a privilege to do this with you week in and week out, even though this was about 48 hours overdue, but that's okay. Life gets difficult.
Shame.
I know, shame. Shame. So, as always, I said honor and privilege. So, until next time, my friend,
Au revoir.
we'll see you.